when it gets to a certain point before 100, we'll be able to trigger a mechanism to feed deer, and to feed those deer in a very scientific manner. But needless to say, we didn't get very far with that proposal. I made a statement then, and I have a problem with it, and I guess it's a problem that, Dr. Schmidt and I are going to probably butt heads about forever. I don't believe that we can save deer by starving them to death so they don't get sick. And this is basically what I see occurring. We're willing to, here in the Upper Peninsula, go back to 1995, 1996, those years, and see a tremendous die-off of deer because we weren't allowed supplemental feeding. Now, I don't even like the term supplemental feeding. We refer to this as emergency feeding. Al Ettenhofer can attest to you the way in which this was done by UP Whitetail in conjunction with the Michigan DNR. You found a herd that for some reason was in dire trouble. Maybe it was an area where you were cutting, the harvest was over with, the snows were heavy, the deer were trapped right there, and the jobbers left, and there went the food supply. At that point in time, bring in some food to take care of, sustain that herd until the weather conditions improve and those deer can break out. Those are the kinds of examples that we're talking about. And it concerns me a great deal, and I guess it's one of the reasons for having this meeting today, is to have this material presented to you. You make up your mind as to what the speakers are saying, but have it presented to you so that you have some awareness of it, because coming down the line is that time when we will not be allowed to either bait or feed because of the restrictions that are now set with the 50-mile limits and so on. This can be pretty catastrophic to us. Where are we going to go? Again, can we be proactive instead of reactive? And I think proactivity certainly is there. I think there's a way we can have our cake and eat it too. Until I see an example of where we had wiped out deer herds. There are certain things in this natural situation that we have. We have certain factors that influence every population. And among those on one side are welfare factors, things like good food, good habitat, good cover, shelter, protection of various kinds by rules, regulations. Those are welfare factors that tend to increase the population, any population, including humans. And on the other hand, we have decimating factors, predation, starvation, all these sorts of things that tend to decrease the population factors. We have to learn to balance those. I think in this particular case, with some of the plans we have, we're not seeing much of a balance. But those are only my comments, my opinions. And you're going to have plenty of time for your own. If there's questions for these people, Roy, you have some comments you want to make?
I want to thank Steve and both Jeff for the presentations. There's good information in both of them. I know me and Steve have had these conversations too, and I suppose if I was a state veterinarian, and using his terms, I'd have blinders on. And that's probably exactly what I'd be telling the Department of Natural Resources in the state. But when you listen to Jeff's presentation, and actually now I'm probably speaking more to Russ and NRC commissioners, there has to be a balance out there. There has to be some common sense. I've been doing natural resource management in the peninsula now for almost a quarter of a century, working with non-industrial private landowners. I've probably been on more land than any wildlife biologist with the DNR that's been up here. And lots of you, within your habitat. We've done studies on baiting and feeding. We've done studies on pellet counting and tried to figure out things like that. And basically, what we heard today, I believe it too. It comes down to habitat. We're in the second growth stages in the Upper Peninsula. That deer herd, you heard Bob Defter say this many years ago, that deer herd's coming down, regardless if we supplemental feed, regardless of what we do. And what concerns me today, I guess, and I want you to think about that, is the conservation order. Not whether we're baiting and feeding here, but what that trigger did. And a good example is when Jeff brought up Beaver Island. It's not associated with Lower Peninsula, but the trigger was pulled and it was cut there. And I'm not familiar with Beaver Island, so I don't want to talk about their populations or habitat, but I am familiar with the Upper Peninsula. and I am familiar with the Lake Superior watershed, where the wildlife goal is way below what, the wildlife population of deer is way below the goal, way below, with supplemental feeding. And, you know, when I first heard of Wisconsin coming up with CWD, you know, I didn't look into it. It's okay, they got CWD. But all the hoopla, I thought it was up like 20–25%. When you actually pull the figures, which I did about a year ago, you see that we're talking like 1%. And I realized the southern part of Wisconsin, very similar to southern lower Michigan. So maybe you don't need the supplemental feeding up there as much. But I believe too, it's more associated with habitat and population numbers than the disease itself. But I did live out in the state of Wyoming from 1980 to 1988. And what I learned out there is when I went there, that was the first place I ever heard of CWD. When I went out there in 1980, I don't know if anybody in the Upper Peninsula heard of CWD. I'm not a doctor, veterinarian, so really I didn't follow diseases. And when I found out it was out there my first year, I asked the question, well, do you eat this stuff? Are you going to die? Does it spread to humans? And everything that, you know, Steve had said, that's what they said, no, don't worry about it. If you see one, shoot them, leave them there, that's the end of it. And that was from the wildlife biologist there. And I lived in a very small town of 600, Pinedale, Wyoming. And you think you get to know your Upper Peninsula DNR folk, well, out there with the game and fish, you're in 600 people, you get to know them very well. Because that's, you know, adults, there's not very many. And so I gave Ron a call, and I said, can you, here about 3 weeks ago, I said, can you send me all the stuff you got in CWD, Wyoming, what your opinion is, it, how long it's been there, and all this stuff. And basically what it comes down to, that I think it is, again, the mode of transmission of CWD has not been identified. Okay, that's just one key issue. But just like out there, it's amazing how the climate around Pinedale, Wyoming, and the UP are pretty close. A little colder out there. You get 60 below, but you can get 40 below here too. And the snow isn't much different. And the interesting thing that I got from him is Wyoming is discouraging feeding, private feeding. The state feeds. The feds feed. And where do they feed? And why do they feed? They feed in the northwest area of Wyoming, very similar to the UP. And I'm map here somewhere. But you can see on this map, even sitting where you are, I colored in the yellow. That's where the feed grounds are. The blue's CWD. So if they had a trigger, that Michigan does, when it was found in the state, they would have triggered that area. And I talked with Ron a little bit about that, and I said, what would be your opinion on what you would lose in that area? And he said, well, you live there, what would you think? I said, 60 to 80%. He said, yes. And I'm talking about the elk. The only place that they could possibly make it are on the top of those wind-blown slopes. And I was an outfitter and a guide out there for 8 years. Had a lot of clientele came through, worked with the game and fish very well out there. And actually fed on all 6 feed grounds. 3 of them, I spent most of the winter there on weekends helping Mickey Byer and them feed. But I was on all 6 of these. So I know exactly where they are, why they're there, and the purpose of they're there. Some of them, like the piney one, you got maybe 300 to 700 elk depending on the year. But what they try to do out there is balance that herd with a hunting season. But they know if they quit supplemental feeding, and this is what Ron said, do we want to take the chance on 3% to 10%, let's say it's higher, or do we want to lose 60% of our herd? It's a no-brainer. So even if CWD comes over there, their plan is, according to what he was telling me, is their plan is to maximize the area of feeding, basically spread out, just like the DNR's plan when you bait or you feed or whatever you're going to do, spread it out, get it out there a little more. Kill the elk that you think have CWD, and basically monitor and keep trying to find research. And basically, if we think of the UP, and if we quit feeding tomorrow, the deer are more distributed in the southern UP. We got agricultural land. I mean, you guys are all from the UP. I don't even have to tell you this, but I'm gonna say it. But when you get in that Lake Superior watershed, which really bothers me up there, for those people who have a huntable population, have a viewing population, and 2-3 deer per square mile probably isn't even a viewing population. But that's what's up there. And what do they come together for in the winter? So if there's no feeding up there, are these deer gonna come together? You bet they are. They come together socially, as we heard, but they also come together here in the winter for cover from the elements, snowfall, food source, and for what wasn't mentioned, for predators. They're safer when they're in numbers too, there's more eyes. And they're gonna come together. So I guess, like I said, if I was Steve, I'd be looking at blinders, but I'm hoping Russ and the 2 commissioners have to be a little more broad-minded and stand up and say, okay, if it does come, where are we gonna pull the trigger? Is it gonna be on this plan, or can we change this plan? Are we just gonna shut everything down and say, well, here, maybe we're saving it, maybe we're not? Because what everything I've heard and everything I've read in all these states, like Steve said, if you get it, you got it. And I haven't seen one thing anywhere that says feeding or baiting causes the disease. But I understand the concept of bringing it together. You know, if somebody's got the flu in here, we all may, a few of us may get it, but not all of us. So where's that trigger gonna be? How's it gonna be drawn in the UP? And I really hope now, being an officer of UPSA, and we had a vote in September in here, 92% of our membership voted for open baiting and feeding in the upper peninsula. That's a super majority. Unless we change our mind, I'm hoping now UPSA with their legislative committees, wildlife committee, and habitat committee can work with the local biologists up here, and then through Russ and the commissioners, to say, just because it's within 50 miles of this border in lower Michigan, or if it does get there, or in Wisconsin, that we need to pull the trigger on the Lake Superior watershed. I think it'd be a huge mistake when we lose more deer. Yeah, that's it. So I just kind of wanted to get that out, and hopefully that we can work with you guys in the future to try to maybe have a different trigger or something that's in that order.